Welcome to the Community Development Podcast, a podcast dedicated to community development practice and approaches, sharing our learning and connecting the workforce. My name is Russell. Okay, so we're in Rumney in Cardiff, the east of the city in Wales. For the benefit of those people who are listening outside of the UK, and there are a few, welcome to you. I'm in the home of Becky Harford. How are you, Becky?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for having me, I suppose. We're going to talk about a local project in Rumney that you've been involved in. There's several that you're involved in locally. They all intermingle and interact and interconnect. But we're going to focus on a project called Benthyg, which is a Welsh word for the verb to borrow. Benthyg, and it's a library of things, a local library of things, which wasn't something I was hugely familiar with, if I'm honest, but it's a very simple concept.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to whether future generations will find all libraries a thing of the past, with threats and cuts to public budgets and expenditure and the declining of social infrastructure. I know the traditional library of books is something that has been a contentious issue in your community here in Rumney. But first of all, Becky, what do people need to know about you?
I suppose in relation to Benthyg and Rumney Forum, how it all came about and how the starting point of this journey of creating these projects and having these ideas was me and my husband moved to Rumney, and I discovered I was pregnant, and then there was loads of complications and my daughter was premature, so I couldn't work, and we ended up being really skint, and we just moved renting this big house, and it was really expensive, and we were so skint. But across the road was the Rumney branch library, so I used to go there with my daughter when she was little, because obviously it's the whole start of this was like a library. You walk in there and it's free. There's no expectations that you've got to purchase anything or be anything else other than just to use the place, And at that time it was I'd go in with my daughter. The women behind the desk would be like, "Oh, I got a new book, I got it," and it's that real sense of community and knowing each other and looking out for each other. So you walk in there, because I was skint, and it was just like a haven almost for us to just go and chill out. And then I walked in one day, and they were like, "The council are closing the library," and I was just nearly crying, just why they can't. And to cut a long story short, got involved with a campaign to save the library, which was called CARL, Community Action from Rumney Library. Ended up being chair, coordinator, just by randomly going to a meeting, and somebody said, "Who wants to run it?" And I was just "Well, what would you have to do?" And they were like, "Okay, you can do it." And that was how I started that. So from that, it led on to the plans to save the library. The council plans for the library were to sell the library and invest the money in Rumney and St Mellons. So Rumney would have ended up with nothing at all. Eventually, after loads of campaigning, the council agreed to do a hub. To pay for the hub, they had to still sell this branch library, which was just a dedicated library rather than a hub. At the same time as Carl was running, there was a kind of loose ad hoc community group called Rumney Forum, which was bubbling along at the side of that, which some people were involved in both. And so Rumney Forum used to do events, really lovely community events and stuff like that. So these two organisations were running side by side. So when the decision was made that they were going to close the library, the two groups of people got together. It's more than just the books. It's the place as well. How do we keep this place? There's something about the place where it was, and I suppose the memories attached to it and the people that go there, and just that whole thing about where it was and what kind of building it was. So trying to cut a long one short here, but so eventually we found somebody in the community to buy the library became Rumney Forum then, registered as a CIO. So now we've got this ex-council library, and we've got the bottom floor, we've got a lease with the person who bought it from the council, but we've got a 99-year peppercorn lease. So effectively, we own that bottom floor. It's full repairing and stuff like that. So we have to take care of everything, but we don't have to pay rent. So it's our building. That's how Rumney Forum started, and that is how the building where Benthyg now resides came about.
And makes it a sort of a pin in the map then, as it gives it a sense of location.
Yeah.
So you talk about places being important.
Yeah.
There's any number of things you've talked about there. I'm interested in all of it, But breaking it down, I'm struck at how an issue then in the community, a loss of a service, in this case a library, almost provides the means for other perhaps or loosely constituted community activity around it begins to coalesce around that issue. It's often the way. And there's other things you've hinted at there around budget, public expenditure, austerity within the UK and all that sort of stuff, all of which is hollowing out some of the social infrastructure that we've got.
Yeah.
Decline of large industry has also had that sort of impact as well, where they were providing some of the stutes and the workmen halls and the galas and everything else. And it's interesting that I think, as this social infrastructure declines in volume, or fees become levied to use it, and you made something I think is absolutely fundamental to what is the merit of a library, but also lots of other social infrastructure and resources that say workplaces or the churches and chapels have provided, trade unions have provided in the past, is that it's free to access. And you said so there's no expectation for you to buy. And I think that's fundamental. And I think what's interesting around things like libraries and some of this other social infrastructure is how they can be very democratic, they can be very sort of egalitarian. You can be the wealthiest person in Rumney, walk into Rumney Library, you can still only take out and loan as many books as the poorest person.
And also
in
you take those books back, so you don't clutter up your house with stuff. Look how much stuff we've all got in our house. Go to a library and you borrow the stuff for a bit and then you take it back. You're not like constantly collecting all this stuff that we all do.
And most of us will be familiar clearly with a library of books. But the library of things is other stuff, and you can illustrate in a moment what other sort of things are there. But is it driven by an anti-consumerism? Is it driven by a desire to have less stuff going obsolete and ultimately into landfill or tips or whatever it might be? Are there for a sustainability agenda? What's driving it, or is it all of those things? And is it other things as well?
It's definitely all of those things. It's the fact that I look around my house and I just see loads of stuff which really is superfluous to what I need. Other people could be using that. We've got so much stuff. Like, the premise of it is, how many times do you use a drill in a year? You want to put up some shelves. Every person on your street doesn't have to own a drill. We can all share that drill, so then that has benefits then. So when the idea first came about was because I told you that I was like skint, and I was like, so we were in this rented house, we had a big garden, and we didn't have a lawnmower. I couldn't afford to buy a lawnmower, and because I'd moved further away from where all my friends had lived, so I couldn't just go, I need a lawnmower, and I didn't feel like I could just go knock on my neighbour's door and go, can I borrow your lawnmower? So that's where the idea kind of sprang from. So it's definitely stuff about like that sustainability, not having so much stuff, consumerism of it all is just obscene sometimes. There was a thing on Facebook or something the other day about packaging, and in a shop they had a plastic package with, here's what you wanted for your birthday, nothing. And it was just like literally a plastic package with like a ball of air in it as like this novelty gift. Like, what kinds of world are we living in where that is seen as like who thought that was a good idea? When like the planet's dying and people are skint and you're selling a thing of air for £3. So it's all of those things together. And also about community, because you're going back to the library, it's the sense of community where you're going in and you're borrowing this stuff which your neighbour might have lent, and when you go into that place to get those stuff, you're making bonds with people, you're meeting new people. Who else is there? Who's having a cup of coffee there? About that as well.
So there's a social aspect.
Definitely
and
a
community cohesion aspect.
Definitely, 100%.
Which is reassuring, given I was unaware of the air for Christmas, which is very almost kind of like sci-fi dystopian.
It really is.
It sounds like something William Burroughs or David Cronenberg or something. But anyway, that's reassuring that there is that social aspect to it as well. So you talk about drills. I don't suppose the consumerism is not just about having a drill; it's about having a better drill next year.
Exactly.
And an even better one the next year.
When does
as well.
it stop?
Yeah.
And all like planned obsolescence and stuff like that, where you can't like repair some of the stuff that you've got. We're being cheated and can't.
So it's drills, it's lawnmowers. What else is it? Just to give an illustration of flavour for people.
We got like various categories we've been cataloguing. We got like we got camping equipment, so that takes up a lot of space. It's also a space issue, like I touched on as well. Things that take up a lot of space in your house, we have it there. So tents, camping equipment. How often do you go camping? Or like maybe you want to try camping, but you can't afford the couple of £100 it would take to get a decent setup as a family to go for the first time. We've got like tents and cookers and cups and stuff like that. We've also got fancy cooking tins for cakes, like those bundt tins. I'm not a baker, but like they're expensive to buy. You might only use it once. Yeah. Say you're a community group and you're starting out and you need a PA for like an event. We've got stuff like that. We've got hot plates if you want to do like an event. We've got projectors, all different kinds of stuff that you wouldn't need to use. So
it's not just for individuals in their own homes,
it's for everyone, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, and like we were looking at maybe if we could get like bigger organisations on board, and then that could help us with the sustainability of the money with it, to like pay like a fee and then their members can get to borrow and stuff like that. So we were looking at it for being for everyone, because community groups can use it as well, you know. So
how do you acquire the things in your library?
So we did a lot of research what people might want to borrow, and then we put out calls for those things, and we had days where people came and donated stuff. A lot of it is donated because that's part of like the premise of it, like let's not waste all this stuff it would just end up in landfill. But
donated from how far and wide? The geographical?
In Cardiff, so like a Rumney, Roath, Splot, we've had stuff from, so you know, this side of the city really.
I suppose what I'm getting at is people recognise that the stuff that they're willing to kind of part with, it can go to a charity shop perhaps, but actually it's something that they can do and contribute to locally. Yeah. And there's that sense of giving then and a social responsibility.
Oh yeah, 100%. And and we've been quite lucky that most of the stuff that we've had has been in good working order, because there's always a danger with stuff like this that you just become like another dumping ground for rubbish, so people just think, I'll just get rid of it there. But people have been actually really good and given us useful working stuff. And we've got like this big garden shredder. This is a big part of it as well. We had this garden shredder, which is like a big piece of equipment. Somebody borrowed it and they were like, the blades were blunt on it, but I've sharpened them for you, there you go. Stuff like that, that's incredible. That's exactly what it is. It's like, so you're borrowing it, but if you make it better as well, you contribute to that, you know, and it's brilliant.
So it's almost like there's always like a maintenance thing happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Oh, fascinating. So that community input, you touched on something there around, you went out and you asked, which I'm kind of struck by, because I think very often, a lot of these projects, they can be motivated by internal desires amongst the people involved. Yeah. And we think this should happen, but of course, if there isn't that buy-in, that engagement more widely, more locally, let alone more widely, it can kind of wither on that vine. Even if it is inherently and fundamentally good, it has to kind of connect. Yeah. So it's interesting that you did that sort of work, but again, I'm assuming you're all volunteers involved with it, and there's a limit to what you can do. So are there other ways in which the community has kind of shaped what you do or how you do it?
I would say that we're on a little bit of a hiatus at the moment, because I've recently started working full time, so I haven't been able to give her as much like energy as I previously have, and that's been to the detriment of the project, because the other people who are involved in that, and we're not there as much, and there's not that interaction so much anymore. So it's at the moment, because we are not able to give it what it needs, it is kind of, we're missing that community interaction with it, which is what we need to focus on again. So it's difficult as volunteers.
But it does ebb and flow, doesn't it?
It does ebb and flow. That's true.
And you have there are natural points within a calendar year, maybe through the summer, for example. I guess more people will get in touch because they've got more work on in the garden, for argument's sake. Yeah. So I guess there's a natural ebb and flow, both within an annual cycle for a project, depending on its focus, but also as well, I think, just because energy ebbs and flows of the people involved. Energy. If somebody was listening to this and going, actually, that's what we need in the community that I live in, how would you suggest people get started? What are the mistakes maybe that you made that you'd encourage people not to repeat? What external support is there? Is there a network? I'm assuming there's other libraries of things out there. We've recently got the landfill disposals tax grant for the project for 3 years, but 2 years of that is to have a paid member of staff. And that's because presumably Rumney's within a catchment area or a radius of a landfill site. So we quite a large landfill site, isn't it, this side of Cardiff? There's another round going, so if anybody's interested, cool. They've just released another round of money for it. So we've got the grant, and that's for paid member staff. And what that paid member staff is going to do is coordinate a group of volunteers for Rumney to take on some of that community interaction stuff and to run it more day to day, volunteer-wise, to do cataloguing and stuff like that. There's an enormous amount of work. You need to have somebody who's got like a good sorted analytical mind almost, who can catalogue things and see things like that. I'm no good at that. The other people I look at a spreadsheet and I want to cry. I can't do it. So you need people like that. Also, part of what the person is going to do
in the first year, hopefully, is to create a toolkit.
Okay.
That other people can take this toolkit and hopefully replicate it, obviously with some tweaks and changes because every community is different. We want Benthygs everywhere, basically, but we want to give people the ability to do that. We're trying to think about how we fit into, as the first one, how we're not precious, but we also want to support people and put it out there. So we're going to expand to Splot as well, into Oasis, which is a whole new demographic of people.
Oasis, again, for people who don't know, is a charity based in Splot, which is sort of between the city centre and Rumney in the east. So you're going westwards towards the city centre, and it's a charity, as my understanding is, and it supports sort of refugees and asylum seekers who come to Cardiff.
Exactly. Yeah, so and Repair Cafe are already there, so we work really closely with Repair Cafe because they're just a natural fit together. So hopefully wherever there's a Benthyg, there'll be a Repair Cafe and vice versa, because they naturally fit together.
So again, it strikes me so that the forum comes about, Benthyg comes about because there's an issue, and those groups coalesce around that issue.
Exactly.
Okay? Still retain a degree of autonomy and independence and identity, and maybe some specific purposes to their existence. You get to a certain level, for want of a better way of putting it, outgrow where you're currently based, and then you coalesce around other things. And it's this, I don't know, it's almost like a biological...
Yeah, it's organic, definitely.
Yeah, sort of parallel to it. And creating those allies and alliances. And clearly there's a hugely kind of political, socially important, culturally important aspect to Oasis's work. But I guess some of those people that come through, if not all of them, come through Oasis's doors, again, will be in a similar position to what you were describing yourself, with a young child and not working and struggling for money and everything else, but then also those social connections. So it seems a natural fit, albeit around a lawnmower or a drill or
things that you need to make where you are a bit nicer, or to go camping for
which
a night.
Which is not unreasonable.
It's not unreasonable
for people to have those basic kind of needs and aspirations. So has there been any support for you though? I'm always interested in this low level, very kind of organic, community activism taking shape. How infrastructure bodies support it or not. If it's not needed, then get out of the way would be my argument. Sometimes the best will in the world, helping but not helping. Is there a wider network out there? You're saying you want Benthygs everywhere. It sounds like that you're one of the first library of things, certainly in Cardiff, maybe in South Wales, I don't know, further afield.
So I believe that we're the first library of things in Wales.
Okay.
I know that in St Mellons, one of the community development workers over there who worked for one of the housing associations ran like an informal lending thing where she'd know the tenants in the area and someone needed that, and then she would bring them together. But this, as far as I know, this is definitely the first situated place where things are stored and people can come in and out and borrow them. But there are other libraries of things in England. So in Frome is the Share Shop, I think it's called. And how originally we had some of the information to start Benthyg was because they released a toolkit, which was free for anyone to look at. And that was so helpful. I mean, we didn't use all of it because every place is different and situations are different. But it was a good understanding of how things work and what you need to think about. And there's also the Library of Things in London, in Crystal Palace. And there's one in Portsmouth now just opened as well. So there's like a network, but the network is between Benthyg and lots of different ones in England. People have told me years ago there used to be toy libraries in Cardiff and stuff. It's not a new idea. It's just that we've taken it to changed it slightly and made it something different. And
I'm familiar with toy libraries. I can remember sort of Community's First grants, the little trust fund going into buying for toys to make them available and things like that, and people would donate. I guess what you're doing is a much broader demographic for a start. It's a broader range of things. I mean, shouldn't you talk about sort of cataloguing? I mean, you wonder whether, librarianism, is that a word? Being a librarian is a profession, is a skill in its own self.
It definitely is. Volunteers can't do this. We're winging it. This should be, the council should be paying, or whoever it is, for us to pay people to do this. It's necessary and people need to be paid. It's hard to volunteer.
What's the cost of not doing it? Is this stuff just taking up space, going to rack and ruin, people then buying other things and so on. So
thinking they need to buy things that they can't afford as well. It's not just what it is. It's actually, I think it's trying to shift people's perceptions about things as well, rather than just like, you have to buy these new things. You don't have to buy these things.
Indeed, and buying things you don't need with money you don't have.
Exactly.
I think is one of sort of late capitalism's
Champagne lifestyle, lemonade wages.
Is one of late capitalism's biggest tricks it's playing on societies. So is Benthyg a brand that can be exported, or is it looking to see it just emerge and flourish elsewhere? It pollinates wherever that kind of pollen kind of lands, because clearly as volunteers, you're focused on Rumney and not unreasonable. This is where you live. This is where you're committed to. But you can begin to see this, as I said, pollinating
totally,
potentially in a lot of different places.
But being not a business-minded person, like I want it to succeed, but ideally I'd like to run it and make money from doing it, because you do need to have somebody who's committed. It's a big thing. I don't know how that could work, because I don't want to keep ownership of it, because it's not my idea. It's a thing that we should all be doing, and however that happens, I just want it to happen. What my capacity is to help that and support that happen without being paid for it is coming into question now that I've started working full time, and we've got this big grant, and it's changed now from being this thing which is a really lush idea and feels kind of a bit revolutionary and like you really want to do it, to something actually there's all this money in the bank and I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
You're getting it. I think what is always the fascinating, come to like a junction, it's like a crossroads whereby you want to keep going forward. In fact, the momentum behind this almost is pushing you forward, but you know that what comes with that is additional requirements of compliance and insurance and forms of regulation and constitutions and AGMs and elections of officers and all that sort of thing, responsibilities to grant funders. So the 50k grant this year, in 2 years' time, becomes 100k grant to expand or duplicate your efforts elsewhere and so on and so forth. And that actually, all of that at the outset sounds good and grand and ambitious and gives you some focus and maybe drive and something to aim for, but it can almost chop away at the knees the volunteer energy, the initial focus, that initial spark. And I think those inherent tensions within that kind of community development practice, and whether you're a paid or unpaid worker, the growth and the expansion and the energy that goes into it can almost, well, more than almost, it can actually have the effect of killing what was that initial spark and that initial motive. And I think it's hard. It's a fascinating tension. It's a scary tension, and I think it can burn people out. You wish people the best of luck, and you wish them to do well, and you encourage them to grow and expand and to have support and to have the grant money coming in. But sometimes it can come at a cost internally within the project or the venture or whatever it is. You perhaps, and I'm sure it will work out, but perhaps are at that sort of
100%, absolutely. Like, I was meeting with there's three of us who kind of do Benthyg together, and we were talking the other day, and one of the other women, and she said, "This is not what I started doing. This is becoming different, and I'm not sure that if this is what I want to do." And I feel like that as well. So we got this big pot of funding to get a paid member of staff. None of us want to do that job because it's not enough money, or it's not too many hours or whatever. So none of us want to do it. But then yet we're still in a position where we're managing that person to do these things. So it's real, and it's like, what? Hang on, we've missed a trick here. Like, what are we doing?
And that person will need support, and they will need supervision. They will need to have their leave, and they will need to have maybe some expenses covered and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Something you touched on, which I think is absolutely critical when we're doing this work. People have the right to go, do you know what, that's me done. Yeah. Permanently, temporarily, whatever it might be. And I know in relation to another organisation locally, another activism locally, that's you've kind of got to that stage. Yeah. I think it's fundamentally important that we have almost like a safe space as activists to say, actually, do you know what, that's me done. Yeah. I'm going to take a step back. But it's difficult because people don't want to let others down. They don't want to necessarily give the impression that they're fleeing a sinking ship. Yeah. But it could be that I've just got other things going on in life, or maybe it's morphed into something, and you touched on it there with your colleague. It's morphed into something that's different, and I think everybody should have the right to be able to go, that's me done. But it's hard when inevitably there's not enough pairs of hands in the first place involved. When it begins to potentially affect people, when it's eating into time, it's undermining kind of relationships and responsibilities that they have, it's eating into that, then actually, yes, we might be having a broader community benefit and a socioeconomic benefit locally. We're bringing people together, and all that's all great, but actually at what cost to the individuals involved? I think it's something that often gets lost by funders. It's often overlooked by the support infrastructure bodies, maybe kind of housing providers who are engaged with this sort of work and activity. People have to have that space, but they need to be sometimes need to be empowered to be able to take themselves away from these things. So, we talk a lot about empowerment of people to get involved. Actually, sometimes these people need to be empowered to cease their involvement. I think that's fascinating.
To pick up on all of that, you're talking about Rumney Forum, which Benthyg is a Rumney Forum project. So Rumney Forum is the charity. It's got the lease on the library, and then Benthyg is part of that. So I'm chair of Rumney Forum. And I've just recently resigned. 3 months after I resigned, in a way which was basically I checked my toys out of the pram. I was like, I've had enough! I'm not doing it anymore! All of this, and then I was like, no, actually, I'm very sorry. Obviously, I'm stressed out. Came back, and then recently I've tendered my resignation, but in a far more productive way, and because I'm on this mentoring scheme it's just finished with the Women's Equality Network. We were on this speed networking thing, and I was saying, like, I need to step away from this. I don't know how to do it. I feel like I'm letting people down. People haven't got the skills that I've got, all of these things that I was worried about. How am I ever going to find anyone to take over this, because it's such a lot of work? And one of the women there said to me, you need to stop looking at this as a burden, because you've got to a point where you're so overwhelmed with it and burnt out. You're feeling like it's a burden, but actually this is a real amazing opportunity for someone to get into the community and do so much good. This is like an amazing opportunity for someone. So if anyone listening wants to do it, come and do it, because it's wicked. I wouldn't be where I am with my career if it wasn't for the things that I did at Rumney Forum, but I'm at the point now where I need to step back, and it's almost like I probably should have done it a while ago, but I feel like it's my baby almost, and I don't want to give it up. And I've had to come to terms with two options. They just carry on as normal, and I'm like, oh well, I wasn't that useful anyway, which I don't really believe, because I want them to carry on. Or they can't get more people, and so all of these things, it's so hard, and there's not really the support for that anyway.
But you've talked about things there that, as things are growing, so on paper, the reports that we write maybe, or the forms that we send back to the funders and all those sorts of things, that it's growing, it's doing all of this, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
But it's actually coming at a price potentially, and it looks like more or less that you've reflected, and reflection, we've talked about reflection a number of times, how important that is. You've pondered it and gone, actually, no, that's me done. I need to take a step back for whatever individual personal reasons. But there was a risk that it would have come at an increasing price. All of that success, in inverted commas, locally, at a cost to you, home life, family, whatever it might be. And that is disempowering. So people talking, that person who's mentored you in that sense is absolutely right. When this is becoming a burden, or at least it's being perceived as a burden, and I guess maybe perception and reality can be different things.
Yeah, totally.
But some things can be a burden.
Yeah.
When we talk about capacity building, that can become decapacitating.
It's not fair on the people. It's not fair on the rest of Rumney Forum. It's not fair on the people who go to the library. It's not fair on anyone.
So presumably your toolkit around the Benthyg side of things, not the broader forum, will that refer to the fact that at some point, if you are successful, you will get to a point where you need people with the kind of the analytical cataloguing, the order, those people whose desks are always immaculate.
Yeah, who are they?
I've never really trusted these people
who are these
because
people?
It's not me either. You need those people. So if you can get them in at the start, great, but you need to find those people at some point. Is it going to touch on some of that?
Yeah, I think...
Or is it just the mechanical side of things?
It's definitely, I think you need to have a range of people who have different skills. So you need to have the people who can go out and just, if they're in the community already, know where the local fun days are and the events are and what's going on, and go and speak to people. So you need that kind of person who can go out and speak to people. You need somebody who's like business minded, who can look at stuff in that analytical way. You need somebody who can build stuff, who can build shelves. You need somebody who knows about surveys and data and stuff like that. You need all different types of people with different skills to make it work. And you need people who can not sell it to the community, because that's wrong, you're not selling it, but be able to get the message out.
Yeah, to connect with people.
To connect with people. It's all about connections. It's about connections and community and making changes together. And
that, I think, is a perfect point at which to wrap this up. Changing, community, connecting. Thank you for your time, Becky. Best of luck with helping move the forum on, even though you're taking a step back. Who knows, another role, another niche might carve itself out for you that does fit. Best luck with work and everything else, because our paths crossed on your Community's First programme, and so I know you're still involved in this stuff, and maybe another podcast, another discussion, and at the risk of going off on a tangent now, would focus on the work that you do, the paid stuff and the unpaid stuff, is it a fuzzy boundary between the two and all that sort of stuff? Because so often it is for people. And it would be great to sort of keep in touch. Do you want to plug a couple of links that people, if they're curious about what you're doing, if they want to come and have a look at it, to learn from you, setting up a Benthyg in Swansea or Glasgow, wherever else it might be, what links might people look at?
It's all on Facebook, so if you just search for Rumney Forum on Facebook or for Benthyg on Facebook, so we're across all social media and just under Rumney Forum or Benthyg. Also, I'd probably give a plug to the Repair Cafe as well, because we're trying to work together, so have a look at what Repair Cafe is doing and where they are, so you can take your stuff to be repaired. So say you want to donate something to Benthyg and it doesn't work, take it to the Repair Cafe and then come and donate it to us. There's a big connection there. And come and have a look at the old library. There's lots of stuff going on there. So we do like knit and natter groups, and there's singing, and obviously Benthyg is open as well. And we do like a fair share food scheme for people who are in food poverty. And it's basically you just need to self-identify that you need it. So if anybody needs anything like that, come and see us. And if anybody wants to be chair, get in contact with me. It's an amazing opportunity. I'm not just saying that, it really is. It's like taught me so much. So just get involved, really.
A little bit of housekeeping before we wrap up. The last podcast we did, which was episode 14, was with Kerry Cunnington from Blaenau Ffestiniog, Dave Horton from Ely and Caira in the west of Cardiff. We were looking at rural and urban distinctions in community development, which was a fascinating discussion. And before that, I did a very, very short monologue, I guess, around what is community development, or what I think it is, or what it means to me. And it was as a contribution to the Mapping Community Media workshop that Dr. Rob Watson from Decentered Media, University of Leicester had hosted, which I unfortunately couldn't get to. And again, we were looking to do something with Rob in due course around community media, which is podcasts, but also other forms of community media such as radio and YouTube channels and things. And it could be something that other people are looking to get involved in. And Rob's got any amount of contacts and expertise, has become a friend of the podcast as well. And I also get asked quite a bit, even though it's sort of 9-10 months since Communities First ended, about the programme, and I penned a short blog that's essentially a sort of short potted history of the programme right from day one right through to the end, that covers all sorts of political aspects of the programme, covers some of the internal mechanics of it, some of the funding streams, etc., and might be of use if people are looking retrospectively at that large-scale sort of government programmes, community development programmes, tackling poverty, anti-poverty programmes. It was all of those things. It was none of those things in the minds of some people. And I think it will be an interesting thing to look back on in future years, whether it's from academia or sort of casual research within community development sector as this programme, because my gut feeling is these big, large-scale state programmes, their days have gone. Maybe Communities First was the last sort of roll of the dice of this sort of thing. I may be proved wrong, but that's there on the blog as well. So until next time, thank you once again, Becky.
Thank you.